Now that's how you do a fucking title screen. Okay, before I get into explaining the what's what about Valfaris, let me just make one thing crystal clear. This game is insanely good. It's so good that it bothers me. Ever play a game where you just can't believe how sick it is? Everything about it? Where you want everyone to experience it? Love it? Cherish it? Okay, I'm getting a bit weird, but yeah, for me, that game is Valfaris. Released for PC and console back in 2019, Valfaris is a metal-infused action platformer. Metal. Metal. I hope you like metal, because this game is metallic. I'm not even just talking about the soundtrack, even the art style is metallic. The music, the aesthetic, the tone, the plot, it all scrapes and grinds together to create a rusted, hulking amalgam of non-stop action, outlandish sci-fi set pieces, top-notch level design and challenging difficulty. There are no moments of boredom, there's no ramping up to the part where it gets good later, there is no fucking filler. This game is the symbolic of 2D shooters. This game is sick, play it, fuck you, let's start the video. You know, there's a lot of games out these days, more than ever before, both on PC and all the consoles, and yet most of the games I hear tell about really don't interest me at all. That's not to say that a game's bad just because it doesn't appeal to me. I have no interest in, say, Forza Horizon 5 or Diablo 3, but they're obviously not bad games. Nonetheless, it's kinda ironic how in a time where there's so much choice out there, so many of us find ourselves scrolling through the PlayStation Store or Steam or whatever else and saying, I wish I had something good to play. Just hoping that something's going to jump out at them. Something that looks better than the rest. Something with passion behind it. Something fun, for God's sake. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for me, that game was Valfaris. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was a must-buy. Buy it I did when it hit PlayStation on November 2019. Valfaris doesn't fanny around much when it comes to its setup. Things are straightforward and fun. You play as Prince Therion, who's been travelling through space aboard his wolf ship. It's like a spaceship, but it kinda looks like a wolf. Now, however, he's returned to his home planet of Valfaris on a revenge mission to find his father, King Vrol. When he gets to Valfaris, though, things have gotten a little bit chaotic, shall we say. And so the whole game is Therion battling his way through his former home, now turned hellscape, Valfaris, trying to discover how everything went so wrong here, and looking for traces of his father. Well, that's the plot out of the way, now let's get on to the gameplay. No, the plot does develop somewhat, and I'll cover that a bit more later, but for now let's just say the story is exactly as deep as it has to be. Cryptic stories have been very much in vogue ever since Dark Souls, and while I'm a FromSoft fanatic, it's often nice to be able to just enjoy a simple, entertaining plot where I actually understand what the hell happened after I finish the game. The core gameplay is also somewhat simple here, but with plenty of depth. This is a two-dimensional shooter, and so you'll primarily be travelling either forwards or backwards, although there's a lot of verticality here too. While there's no double jump, dash, slide, hover, or anything else of that sort, I never really felt the need for any of these classic 2D platforming manoeuvres. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of platforming on offer here, but your regular old jump does the job just fine. As for the actual shooting, although Valfaris sports a ton of different weapons, these can be separated into three main categories: primary weapons, secondary weapons, and melee weapons, and only one of each can be equipped at any one time. In addition to your offensive arsenal, there's also an energy shield which is used to block projectiles, deflect projectiles back at enemies, and parry melee attacks. Both your secondary weapons and energy shield require, well, energy to use, and you'll mainly be restoring this via melee attacks, although there are energy pickups, same with health. The movement mechanics and moment-to-moment action is all very tight here, and when you take a hit from an enemy, it's always your fault, and you can almost always tell how you died. Although this can be a very punishing game at times and occasionally frustrating, I never, or almost never, found myself calling bullshit when I took hits or died. Speaking of dying, you'll die a lot, by the way. Anytime you die, you'll spawn back at the latest activated resurrection altar, which I'll just refer to as checkpoints from here on. In order to activate one of these altars, however, you'll need to spend a resurrection idol. Thing is, you can hoard any idols you find instead of using them. For every idol you collect, you'll get a bump up to your maximum health and energy. Although most of the idols found through the game are located in fairly easy to spot places, there are others which will require a little bit more looking around, and others still hidden in secret rooms behind destructible walls. Thus, if you're diligent in scouring every level for secret goodies, you'll be rewarded with a good supply of idols so that you can activate every checkpoint. If, however, you want to be a wee bit more bold, you can always just skip a checkpoint and keep the idol, building up on that max health buff. Now, a lot of the time you'll be so relieved at finding another checkpoint that the idea of not activating a new one might not even occur to you, especially seeing as how they also restore your health. But sometimes you just gotta say fuck it, fuck this checkpoint, and carry on with the level, you know what I mean. Sometimes this all goes horribly wrong, like when I died here and remembered I skipped the last checkpoint and had to replay a really hard bit again. You can actually tell by my inputs here that I'm going, wait, what? Ah shit. But when you do make it to that next checkpoint, taking extra care not to take any unnecessary hits, it's a great feeling. Great use of the old risk reward, and it's totally optional too. You can just play it safe and hit every checkpoint if you like. You'll be shooting and blowing up a lot of shit in Valfaris, so let's talk about that, shall we? The level of enemy variety is fantastic, both their visual designs and their attacks, and the flavour of creatures you fight changes appropriately depending on what environment you're in. It's not just a bunch of dudes with guns either, there are a ton of different enemies and they all have different ways of dealing with them. This game isn't just a case of let's throw a fuck ton of bad guys at you and good luck. You've got to learn the enemy's attacks and learn how to deal with them. Maybe just kill them in one with a melee hit, or bait them into a ranged attack and get them from below, or time it right and parry them to leave them vulnerable. The best move depends on the enemy, and there are often several good ways to deal with any individual enemy. Although Therion is a very powerful protagonist, you'll be killing a lot of shit in fun ways right from the start. Trying to brute force this game probably won't work out so well, although in most areas it is very important to always keep moving. This is because certain enemies will continue to spawn, like these dogs or these vampire looking things, so sticking around to try and wipe them all out will just get you killed. This gives a lot of sections in the game an enjoyably frantic feel. You're being attacked from all angles and trying to platform at the same time and being tentacled by tentacles, guitar blasting in the background. I love it. This is a pretty damn tough game, but it's nothing crazy. Yes, some parts are rough to get through, but after a good few attempts, you do get through them, and the spacing between the checkpoints really isn't too punishing. Where the difficulty becomes most present though is in the boss fights. I love bosses. Ones with lots of health for me to unload my rounds on, ones with killer designs and tricky attack patterns for me to figure out and experiment with. Luckily for me, and hopefully you, Valfaris has a lot of fun bosses, and also mini bosses which don't have a visible health bar, but which might show up in the midst of regular combat and require a bit more killing. While it's feasible that some folk will beat some of the bosses in their first try, there are some here which are sure to require most people a lot of tries. A contender for the hardest boss in the game, but also one of the sickest, is Therion's brother, Ifnan. Be honest, is this not one of the coolest boss intros of all time? This guy's so fucking sick, but he's really tough too, and you've got to learn his attacks, same as you would with the Dark Souls boss. You go in, you get battered, go in again, maybe do a bit better than last time, and 20 deaths later you're a damn pro and know the tricks and timings of all the attacks. Just be aware though that this game is more than happy to give you a final kick in the nuts after beating a tough boss. With the old, oh you beat me? Guess I'll self-destruct and fuck up your day. It does this multiple times on different bosses throughout the game, so always expect it. It's funny now that I've beaten it, but it's not necessarily funny at the time. Although this whole game is top quality, the bosses are always a highlight for me. There's some wild designs here, and there's usually a bit of dumb, cheesy dialogue before and after, and I do mean dumb and cheesy. Again, I think they got the difficulty level just right for the bosses. There are a few brutal ones, especially the final boss, but I often found that after a few good rounds I'd usually discover some trick, or find out that a certain annoying move can actually be parried. Now what would a 2D sci-fi shooter be without some awesome weapons? Throughout the game you'll come across new weapons stored in these green tanks. They often come near a major boss. There are also a few secret weapons dotted around which can be easy to miss on a first playthrough. Also, I've got to show the animation that plays when you get a new weapon. Nice. Although you start with a plasma pistol and energy sword, you'll soon find a tentacle, a spirit beam, a flaming sword which is also Therian's brother from the first game apparently, don't ask, a shotgun, a flamethrower, a plasma beam, and tons more shit, including stuff I haven't even found. You've got to be at a checkpoint to switch around your loadout, and so picking the right combination of weapons for a particular area or boss really can make it a good bit easier. Your weapons can also be upgraded with a material called blood metal, sick name, and there are 4 upgrade levels for every weapon. These are rarely just flat damage upgrades either. Upgrades can include things like range, shot spread, plus upgrades also make your weapon projectiles look different as they get more powerful, making it that much more rewarding when you spend your hard earned blood metals on them. Just like resurrection idols, blood metal tends to be hidden round levels, and sometimes as a reward for defeating more powerful enemies. Although there are a good amount to be found, there's nowhere near enough to upgrade everything, and so you need to choose wisely when it comes to deciding which weapons to upgrade and which weapons to leave. My personal favourites were the Therion's Call, which has a decent range and works like a railgun, penetrating through enemies, the Jelly Whip, because it looks cool and has the best range of any melee weapon, which counts for a lot in this game, and the Bringer of Mayhem, as it homes onto enemies, and it's perfect for clearing a lot of creatures at a time without having to aim too much. Yeah, the weapons have very metal names too, by the way, like Hellhammer, Sky Splitter, and Envoy of Destruction. I wouldn't have it any other way. Due to Valfaris being a crazed, corrupted, chaotic alien planet, expect some incredible looking level designs. Different levels tend to have their own dominant colour schemes, so expect a lot of blue horizons, green organic matter, purple gloop, and blood red rain. Take away the UI and near any scene from any level is a damn piece of art. That's not something you can say about most games. The style opted for here works so well, and so much attention has been paid to every little detail. It's a perfect blend of both 2D and 3D art, giving it a retro but also somewhat modern look. There's a lot of time and love being put into designing these backgrounds, and it wasn't wasted. While there are dominant aesthetic themes for each level, it almost never sticks to just the one thing for too long, constantly throwing in new weird shit into the backgrounds, and rarely are these backgrounds static. Things are constantly blowing in the wind, wriggling round, dripping, flying, pulsating. I can never know exactly what the artists for Valfaris were thinking when they designed this shit, but it's like their number one priority was to make absolutely everything look awesome. And if there was anything which didn't meet that standard, toss it out. The same way that everyone's eyes popped out of their head when they first saw Cuphead, I think Valfaris has that same effect on some people, albeit to a lesser degree. It shares this effect with another 2D platformer, Blasphemous, another one of my favourites, with similarly striking artwork. The design of the enemies and bosses are also memorable, weird and extreme, always with dumb but fun names like Miasma Worm, Gazer Guard, and Hell Cobra. There's some really weird shit here too, like these tentacle things, and these pink dudes which everyone died to. If there's one negative thing I can say about the visuals, it's that it can sometimes be a bit hard to tell what will and won't do damage to you, with some enemies and obstacles being situated in a way which makes them camouflage with the background. But the thing that pushes all the challenging gameplay and the corroded sci-fi splendour to greater heights is that fucking soundtrack. Now, I love metal, it's my favourite genre. I like the really heavy stuff more than anything else. But I think even a non-metal listener's got to bang their head to these tunes, even a little bit. Come on. Kurt Victor Bryant, formerly of Celtic Frost, wrote the whole OST, and it slaps. The grinding guitar riffs and double bass drums fit perfectly with the colourful and otherworldly hellscape of Valfaris. There's no build-up either, it's instant. As soon as you get control of Therion, you are blasted with this shit, and it's amazing. Although most of the tracks are faster paced, some levels opt for slower, doomier droning guitars, rather than non-stop relentless double bass madness. The bosses always have killer tunes too, making them that much more enjoyable. Even when you're on your 15th attempt at a boss, at least the music's sick. If you're going to make a 2D Metroidvania or Contra styled game these days, you've got to nail the soundtrack. You have to. Hollow Knight did. Blasphemous did. And Valfaris? Yeah, Valfaris did too. So, about that plot. Let's cover what goes down in Valfaris. Spoilers ahead. As Therion revisits old locations around Valfaris, he runs into monstrous creatures, but also some figures from his old life, several of whom talk about how Therion's father, Vrol, that's not an easy name for me to say in my accent by the way, Vrol. Anyway, people keep saying that Vrol's the one responsible for all this, and that he's doing Valfaris because of his greed and lust for power. We're not too sure what they mean by this until we get some specifics from Furok, Vrol's former general, who we meet near the end. This guy's cool as fuck, by the way. Listen to this. Furok explains that Vrol tried to harness the energy of Sol Mori, Valfaris' son, except this backfired and caused a rift in the void, and now Valfaris is on a collision course with Sol Mori. This planet is screwed, but there are also some who want this to happen, claiming that it's the only way for Valfaris to be purified from the chaos and corruption. This is the thinking of Kaivok, the new ruler of Valfaris. Upon first meeting him, Kaivok tries to destroy Therion from aboard his ironclad Desolator, and after being defeated he flees, claiming that no one can stop what's being started here. Valfaris is headed for the sun, and needless to say, it's doomed. After fighting through the final level, the cathedral, and reaching the top, we meet Kaivok again, this time for a final showdown as the blazing purple sun of Sol Mori bears down upon these warriors. The final boss is super hard by the way and has 3 phases, with Kaivok transforming into the 3-headed Hydravok after the first phase, and then after losing 2 of its 3 heads, pulling Therion into gravitational torment in a desperate final bout with this fire-spewing beast while being beset from all sides by asteroids. Therion succeeds in destroying the Hydravok, but as we already knew, it's too late for Valfaris. He calls in his wolf ship and leaves his doomed home planet to be engulfed by Sol Mori. But there's still work to do. King Vrol is still at large and he must pay. After a scan, it's discovered that traces of Vrol seem to be present on 9 different planets. Plot a course to the nearest planet. It's time for Vrol to die. As if it needed repeating at this point, I love Valfaris and genuinely have barely a bad word to say about it. It's a really fun game with heart and style, and I never get tired of playing it. It has just the right level of challenge, just the right level of depth and complexity, and there is nothing pretentious about it. What you see is exactly what you get, and I wish more games were like it. I should also mention that the developers later added in a full metal mode, which unlocks upon completion. It's essentially a new game plus, but way harder, and it's perfect for those wanting another run through the game to find more secrets and level up all their weapons. As we saw, the game ends on a cliffhanger, and a sequel was indeed announced, coming in 2023, Valfaris Mecha Therion. This reveal certainly raised my eyebrow a wee bit when it was first shown, because the art style is somewhat different, being far more 3-dimensional. I'm sure it'll be great, and I'll definitely be picking it up. Let's hope for the best. As always, cheers for watching and cheerio.